Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're here to talk about ISO construction types. Companies really use this to determine the pricing for a given building and the fire rate that they assign to a building, which in layman's terms, that impacts the cost and the price of the insurance for your customer or prospect. So getting the ISO construction type correct could be the difference between winning and losing an account or saving an account from a competitor. So it's extremely important you get this correct, and I'm going to show you some of the things that you can use to identify how a building was built. You'll see this resource here. It's available in the agent playbook. If you don't have it, please reach out to Janelle or another member of the team to get that. When determining how a building was built, you're kind of trying to see what was behind the walls. So as you see here, it was wooden trusses holding up the roof. You have wooden 2x4s on the outsides that are structural. It's a stick-built building. There's wood all throughout. This is a frame building. Frame buildings can have masonry exteriors that is framed with brick veneer. Your ISO construction type is going to be frame. Brotherhood Mutual is the only company that I know of that will assign frame with brick veneer the JM, joisted masonry rate. However, it's still frame building. So when you're talking about the ISO construction type, it's really what's holding up the walls, what's holding up the wooden trusses, are those combustible materials. If you have wooden support beams, it's going to be a frame building. Most residential housing is frame. So you'll see the exterior can be wood paneling, it can be aluminum siding, it can be vinyl siding. Those are the most standard things you're going to see, brick siding. The next construction type is joisted masonry. So the difference between a frame building and a joisted masonry building is the part below the roof is going to be a masonry structure, and the roof joists are going to still be made of wood. You see here, you've got the concrete block as the structural support for the walls, but then the roof joists are made of wood. So you have masonry walls with a joisted roof, so you get joisted masonry. Typically you're going to see cement blocks. Sometimes you'll see structural brick or stone, but cement blocks are going to be the most common type of JM construction, especially if it's newer construction. It's pretty easy to tell what a JM structure is because the exterior, you're going to see the concrete block, you're going to see the structural brick, you're going to see a brick on concrete block. So if it has brick exterior, it could either be a frame building or it could be a JM building, or it could be a potentially masonry non-combustible. But it really comes down to what's holding that building up. Are the walls made of concrete or are the walls made of wood? It makes sense why a company would charge a different rate for a wood-built building than a concrete-built building. A concrete building will burn a lot slower than a wooden building. So continuing on, the next type of building is non-combustible, and this is going to be your metal buildings. One thing you can look for with a metal building is these are going to often be squares or rectangles. Now there might be a foyer or entryway that goes off the rectangle, but it would either be one giant rectangle or a couple rectangles put together because these steel prefab buildings are all going to come set up, and there is a regulation length and there's a regulation width. They all kind of have that square or rectangle look. You're not going to get angles, you're not going to get build outs. There's going to be much less in terms of nuances to the building. It's going to look more like a square or a rectangle. Non-combustible buildings tend to be pretty cheap to build. That's the upside. But yet again, it's non-combustible because you have steel beams holding up the structure on the outside, and you have steel beams holding up the structure for the roof. So you have steel roof joists and steel support beams on the walls. Then the last ISO construction type is the masonry non-combustible construction type. This is going to get your lowest fire rate, and this one is a building that is completely built with non-combustible elements. So you're going to have a masonry exterior wall and a masonry roof. It could either be a concrete built roof, it could be a steel built roof. There's a few different ways it can go. In a moment, I'm going to go through a few pictures and show you some of the things you look for on these. But a lot of times, if you see a flat roof Flat roofs are typically a sign of masonry non-combustible construction. That doesn't always mean that's the case. I've seen frame buildings that have a mostly flat roof. You'll see that in residential construction a lot, but it's really, those really aren't flat roofs. There's a gentle rolling slope to them. But typically when you're seeing a flat roof and it's a masonry exterior, you're probably going to have a masonry non-combustible building. Masonry non-combustible buildings don't always have a flat roof because you could have steel roof joists and then you have non-combustible elements throughout, but you have the masonry walls, the non-combustible roof. The next ISO class is fire resistive or semi-fire resistive. I've never used this ISO class, however, it is out there. The only way I would know to look for this would be from the blueprints or knowledge from the insurance contact themselves. If it's a newer building, you can often find someone within the congregation or church who knows a little bit about how the building was built. If it's a really old building, you're not going to find someone who was alive in 1910 to tell you how they built the building. But if it's a building built in 2005, it's worth asking the question to your contact if they know what kind of roof joists were used, if they were steel or wood, that type of thing. So I'm going to show you a few pictures here and some of the things that I would look for to tell me what kind of structure this is. This first building here, you can see they've got the stucco. You can see there's concrete block. You can see they have a steel roof. My immediate thought is you have masonry walls. You can see a lot of times the stucco is a sign of masonry, not always. You can have frame construction with a stucco, but the fact that you have the concrete blocks below that tell me that this is probably a masonry building. And then the next clue is if you look at the pitch of the roof, this is a 20 to 30 degree angle. It's so you have a more gentle sloped roof and it's symmetrical. Those two things tell me it's probably steel beams up there, because steel beams can support a much lower pitch on the roof than a wooden truss would. The other thing I see here is they've got a steel roof decking or the steel roof covering. If you've got all steel construction, they're going to put steel on the roof as well. Could be a steel roof with asphalt shingles on top, but a lot of times they'll just do steel on steel. So this was a masonry non-combustible building because you have the masonry exterior wall, the steel roof joist, the steel roof decking. So you have all non-combustible elements and the masonry wall. So it gets masonry non-combustible. If the walls were steel or steel on steel girts, it would be a non-combustible structure. And the biggest difference between non-combustible and masonry non-combustible is going to be the cost of your estimate. Masonry materials are more expensive than steel and that type of prefab construction. So the masonry non-combustible is the most expensive to rebuild and the cheapest fire rate. This next building, this one is a joisted masonry structure. And the things I'm looking at here that tell me it's a JM structure, you've got the masonry concrete exterior, so it's some sort of masonry, and the roof pitch is closer to 45 degrees, which is more in line with a wooden truss. In addition, you can see this building, they used frame for that top part. They probably framed out the wooden portion and then you have the masonry portion below it. So you have joisted masonry because they put joists above the masonry part. It's the same building, but it's the front part of that same building. You can see they've got the brick walls. I'm not sure if this is a masonry building or a frame building, but it is definitely a JM structure or frame with brick veneer. They've got wooden trusses. That one thing is one piece is apparent to me, and this actually, if you go in the sanctuary, you can see the wooden decking and wooden trusses. So that's a JM structure. Actually, I'm pretty sure this is JM, not frame. The way I knew that was if you look at the windows, and it's hard to see in pictures, but in real life you can tell some of these things. That's why site visits and actual photos are important. It's hard to tell from Google. a lot of times. For a frame structure, your windows are going to have shallower windows, whereas for a masonry structure, the wall is going to be as thick as a concrete block, so your windows are generally going to be a foot thick. And a lot of times you won't have as many windows, or you won't be able to open the windows in those structures. So if you look at the window, a 2x4 is about half the width of a concrete block, so you can see that at the window well. This next picture, this is a frame building. This is a pretty traditional building. It's actually built, one of the older buildings I insure probably. They've got the wooden siding, they've got the asphalt fiberglass shingles, they've got about a 45-degree roof pitch. It's pretty clearly a frame structure here. Now they do have the masonry basement, but the structure is going to be, it's being held up by wooden joists, so it's a frame structure. This building here is another example of joisted masonry construction, and actually this is frame with brick veneer. And the way I can tell that this is framed by brick veneer with brick veneer, because the windows. These windows look a lot like a residential building. Most residential buildings are frame buildings. That tells me that they used wooden 2x4s to frame in the building. Then they put the brick on the exterior and wooden trusses above. So you have a frame structure with masonry veneer that for ISO purposes is a frame building. With Brotherhood Mutual's building estimator, you will use frame with brick veneer, which then Brotherhood gives the joisted masonry rate to. So rate it as frame with brick veneer when you see something like this. It's only going to impact your estimate. It's not going to impact the rate given by Brotherhood. This next structure was built in multiple sections, so that adds some complications sometimes if it's multiple sections, and you can use multiple sections on your estimate. As long as each section is a third of total building, they'll honor the mixed construction. But the portion of this building I'm going to focus on is the part closest to us, and as you'll see, that has about a 45-degree pitch. It's got the masonry exterior. This is going to be joisted masonry construction, not frame with brick veneer. The section we're going to focus on is the section closest to us, and this section is a joisted masonry section. And the way you can identify this is the roof pitch is about a 45-degree angle, and they have the brick exterior. So it looks like they have wooden trusses. This section was built in the 60s. A lot of construction in the 60s and 70s of this type was joisted masonry and not framed with brick veneer. So this portion is joisted masonry for ISO purposes. This is the inside of one of my sanctuaries. This is a joisted masonry sanctuary. I like this picture because it shows you the concrete wall. It shows you the wooden trusses. This is a quintessential joisted masonry structure. Masonry walls, frame, wood construction for the roof, joisted masonry. This is a little teaser for the next segment we're going to do. The next segment goes into the building estimator as a whole. This building here, you can see from the roof, they've got a large flat roof and they have two pitched roofs with wooden trusses. So all the walls are masonry and about half the roof is masonry. Here in my estimate, you can see that I rated out the two joisted masonry sections, and when I did my estimate, I rated this as mixed construction as about half JM, half masonry non-combustible. Now Brotherhood's the only company that does that. For ISO purposes, whatever is over 50% is what you're going to say is the ISO construction class, and that is what most companies are going to honor. I don't know of any other company that acknowledges mixed construction and gives a different rate for mixed construction. So that can be a competitive advantage for you in a quoting situation. It was for me on this account. They were with an ISO company. I believe it was even like State Farm or something. But we were able to significantly save them money because they were rated as a joisted masonry building, and we could rate it as mixed construction with half masonry non-combustible, half joisted masonry. That turned into a savings of over $1,000 for this customer. So you can do mixed construction. In fact, I encourage it. And I also encourage you to watch the next video we're going to put together, which is on the building estimator. And I'm going to go through all the different parts of a building estimator. And this last picture is a masonry non-combustible structure. Yeah, it's a pretty fantastic building. So if you have questions, reach out to me or another member of the team. Thanks for watching, guys. See you soon.